Less than 24 hours after free agency started, the Bulls roster is essentially done. Welcome to the Bull-ieve Podcast, a Chicago Bulls podcast brought to you by me, Sonny Verma, your host. Make sure you hit the like button. It's a brand new channel. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well and send it to your fellow Bulls fans as we discuss the breaking news as of Wednesday morning that the Chicago Bulls signed Norman Powell, guard Norman Powell, to a 2-year, $45 million contract. Now, the whispers were suggesting that this was going to happen. I think Joe Cowley yesterday even kind of hinted that there was certainly legs to this connection. And this morning looks like it was done, which pretty much brings the free agency period for Chicago to an end. Yesterday, they just signed backup center Zach Collins to a 2-year, $17 million contract, which I guess we'll probably talk about a little bit on this episode. And now with the 2-year, $45 million contract going to Norman Powell, that salary cap that the Chicago Bulls were essentially very proud of coming into this offseason, well, it's done. And we can kind of take a step back and kind of take a look at what Bryson Graham has done with this roster. And I think you kind of get a hint of what his plan was all along. There's some of you, and I think hand up, I would be included in this, who would have probably preferred to absorb a big contract and maybe get a draft pick and make that use out of the big salary cap room that we had. But it appears that just isn't going to happen as much anymore in today's modern day NBA. Now it just certainly does seem like teams are, maybe they'll throw in a second round draft pick. But let's be honest, if the Chicago Bulls at this point get a second round draft pick, what they're really getting is something to sell off for a couple $100,000 on draft day. And we saw that obviously with Acme. We saw that before with Garpax. And we were maybe hopeful that it wouldn't happen in the Bryson Graham era, but it looks like that's exactly what happened in Bryson's first draft. So how much do we really value second round picks anyway? You know what? Before I even get around to that, let's just talk about the Norman Powell signing. 6'4" guard. He finally made the All-Star team last year. And quite honestly, if you look at it from a roster perspective, great move for the Chicago Bulls. Norman Powell essentially fills all the weaknesses that this team is perceived to have next year. The Chicago Bulls needed a shooter. Well, Norman Powell shoots just a hair under 40%, 39.6% from three-point land for his career. Now that they lost some of their foundational pieces from last year's team, well, the Chicago Bulls, they're going to need scorers, right? You can't put all the pressure on Modest Buzelis and Caleb Wilson, who's only going to be a rookie. You need someone to be able to go out there and get you maybe 15, 20 points a night. And Norman Powell has no problem doing that. The last 2 years ago, he averaged 21.8 points per game. Last year, he averaged 21.7 for the Miami Heat. And again, this is a guy who can take the attention from the opposing defenses for a while. And Modest, I'm assuming, I think the hope within the Bulls organizations and the Bulls fans is going to be that Modest can lead the team in scoring this upcoming year. But as high as we are on Caleb Wilson and entering the Caleb Wilson era, I don't necessarily know, even though Caleb seems to not mind adding more pressure to himself, I would prefer it that the pressure doesn't have to be on him. If it's self-inflicted, that's one thing. But I don't want him to feel obligated that he has to do too much on the basketball court while he kind of fills himself out physically and tries to adjust to the speed and physicality of what the NBA is like. Bringing in a guy like Norman Powell, 2-year contract. As I said, he's 33 years old. So if we're being frank here, he's not really fitting in the timeline of what the Modest and Caleb era is eventually going to turn out to. At least that's what us Chicago Bulls fans are hoping for. But he's a placeholder, right? He can help get the team. He can bridge the team to eventually handing it off to Caleb and Modest. Now, obviously, we're hoping Caleb and Modest are going to take controls of the team sooner than that. But, Norman is a good partner to Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey is clearly a pass-first type of player, and he's always been a pass-first type of player. And you surround him with shooters, athletic players. Keep in mind, Norman Powell played for one of the fastest teams in the league last year, the Miami Heat. And now, when you have guys like Modest Buzelis and Caleb Wilson and, Josh Giddey and Nic Claxton, that's an athletic team that can get up and down on the court. Now, while we don't exactly know what Thiago Splitter is going to be wanting to do with this roster, you can see that at least the player profiles are there, that if we want to be a little bit more back and forth next season, I think this team is going to be capable of doing it. And Norman Powell kind of fits right into that. He doesn't pass the ball all that well, but again, that's why you have Giddey. That's why you have Modest. That's why you have Caleb Wilson, who's an above-average passer for his profile as well. I think overall, sound move. It's not an exciting move. And let me know in the comment section whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Because, again, you could have taken the splashier route of trying to bring in a big name and attach some future assets to it. Originally, that was my hope. I'm a little less hopeful of that, only because now I see that the league is adjusting in regards to the new tanking rules. It's more important now not to be one of the three worst teams in the league. I think the signing of Norman Powell and to a lesser extent Zach Collins is going to help you do that. There's going to be three clearly worse teams. I don't know if this is a playoff team, certainly not yet, unless Caleb Wilson shows up on the basketball court day one a lot better than we all kind of expect him to be. Modest Buzelis maybe is now ready to make that jump in his third season with the Chicago Bulls. But I think realistic expectations need to be that maybe this team wins right around 40 games, maybe a couple games less than that. Norman Powell, well, he can be that guy. You know, he fits a need for this basketball team. But Bryson Graham, essentially his first offseason is almost over. I know there was a lot of controversy or debate on Tuesday night when the Chicago Bulls announced that they had signed Zach Collins to the 2-year, I believe it was $17 million extension, which essentially wiped off a substantial portion of their cap space. I don't know how crazy excited or upset I am about that trade. It just seems like a move that happened just for the sake of happening. Obviously, they knew they had about $31 million coming into free agency, and that's because they traded for the contract of Nic Claxton. Well, the fact that these two moves happened essentially back-to-back and basically take up the rest of the cap space tells me that Bryson Graham knew that he had Norman Powell in the fold. And if you've got Norman Powell, if you're just, crossing your T's and dotting your last I's, well, then if you liked what you saw from Zach Collins, you've seen some of the contracts that are going out to other bigs right now in this free agency. It's nuts. And so maybe at Zach Collins at that price point, keep in mind the second year of Collins' contract is a team option. So it's quite honestly, when Zach Collins plays, he's an above average player. Is he a starting center in the league? No. But is he a guy who could be a part of your big man rotation? Absolutely, especially for the type of passer he is and what we, again, envision that the Thiago Splitter offense is eventually going to look like. I can understand why they think Zach Collins is going to be integral to that whole outfit. But should we have an opportunity in the future, Zach will have a very tradable contract. And even if we decide not to trade him, the second year being a team option gives Bryson Graham, again, that flexibility that he seems to be wanting when it comes to shape this basketball team. To me, at least, it seems pretty clear now that 2026, 2027 is more so about getting Caleb Wilson's feet wet and seeing if Modest is ready to make that jump. And I think maybe Bulls fans, whether we like it or not, we're going to have to wait one more summer and maybe beyond that to really see Bryson go all in trying to put together the pieces of what he perceives to be the next Bulls finals team. This season is going to be all about Dalen Swain. Is he going to be ready to take over that shooting guard role? Maybe next season, hopefully, obviously by the end of this season, but just in case he's not, again, the signing of Norman Powell tells you that, hey, Dalen, there's no pressure. Go do what you got to do. Go play defense. Go be physical. Go be versatile. The shooting will come. Don't stress out about it. It'll come in time. Right now, we got Norman, and you've got a year or two to work on your shot and get it developed to a point where it becomes an asset in your profile. But anyways, let me know what you guys think. Is there any moves that I'm missing? For my knowledge, pretty much the roster is pretty much full. I think you might have still have your mid-level exception to spend, but outside that, salary cap is essentially done. If you had known a month ago that your draft picks would be Caleb Wilson, Dalen Swain, Norman Powell, and your free agents moves would be Norman Powell and Zach Collins, what would you have graded that? And so I want you to grade that now, after the fact, and how you think you would have graded that a month ago before all of this happened. I appreciate all of you guys joining me. Please, on your way out, make sure you hit the like button. I got a brand new channel. Most of you guys are probably watching me knowing I do a lot of Illini content, but the Chicago Bulls have been intriguing me for a little while. So it's something I'm doing on the side, but I appreciate all of you guys' support. Again, please subscribe to the channel. It's at 23 subs coming in to this video. My goal to make it number 25. If you are number 25, please let me know in the comment section. I read each and every comment. I appreciate each and every one of you. And until next time, see you red.